It's the book club for kids.
It's the book club for kids.
It's the book club for kids.
It's the Book Club for Kids podcast.
Hi, I'm Kitty Felde. If you're feeling a bit Halloweenish, this is the episode for you. The book is Witchlings, where our heroine must complete an impossible task if she ever wants to be a real witch.
3 weeks to solve a mystery, 3 weeks to complete the task, 3 weeks to fix this, or they'd lose their magic and be witchlings forever.
That's our celebrity reader, veteran reporter Stephanie Roberts. Students from Brookland Middle School in Washington, D.C. explain why they love fantasy novels.
Fantasy is like an escape to another world where you can imagine stuff you could do to get your mind off of the terrible things that happen in this world.
And writer Claribel Ortega has some writing advice for kids who want to write fantasy novels.
Write down things like monster names, character names, spells, anything like that in like a specific document, because if you end up writing a second book or just needing to revise, it'll be a good place to sort of pull information from. So that's a little bit of practical advice.
This is the Book Club for Kids, the show where kids talk about books. We'll tell you how you can be on the show a little later on, but first, let's meet our readers.
Hello, my name is Nehemiah.
Hello, my name is Sanaya.
Hello, my name is Sky.
Hello, my name is Azia, and we are the 6th, 7th, 8th graders in Brookland Middle School that is at Washington, D.C.
So the book is Witchlings. What is it about?
The world basically is like a witch world. Reference like the Owl House, a Disney Channel show. It's basically like that. There are witchings, like kids who haven't gotten their magical powers yet, but they're supposed to be witchings. They get sorted into covens like House Hyacinth, House Goose, House Frog, House Spare.
In the first chapter, it starts off with this girl named Seven, and she wanted to not be a spare, because the spares were the lowest class of them all, and they was an outcast. So she was trying to do everything she could so she wouldn't have to be a spare.
So will we describe this book as a fantasy or what?
I would describe it as a fantasy because it has witches and stuff like that in it and magical powers.
I would describe it like a mix with fantasy and real world situations because they have similar like connections between them.
This is that kind of book that's a quest book. You know, it could be like The Wizard of Oz, where she has to go and, try to get back to Kansas, or Percy Jackson. Yeah, I mean, draw the comparison. What are the quests that are in those books? And do you like quest books?
Well, I do like quest books like Percy Jackson and The Wizard of Oz. The similarities with Percy Jackson and the Witchlings is that they have to go, like they have to stop something or rescue something. Like for the Percy Jackson book, the first book, the lightning thief, he has to go stop the monster that killed his parents. And in the Witchlings book, she has to, her, Violet Pepperhorn, and Poppy have to go stop the night beast. So I find that's a similarity.
What else does this book remind you of? Is there another book out there that's similar to this one?
I would say Harry Potter because you have to get into like some sort of house that depends on your powers and how high your powers are.
The School for Good and Evil. So they made a new Netflix show about it, which I don't honestly like. But the School for Good and Evil is like there's a separate. They were once like combined to be a combined school, but then the headmaster for the other school, because there were two headmasters, she became evil and they made her own school and they separated. So that mostly reminds me of House Hyacinth and Spare, or House Goose and Frog, how they have enmities with each other.
The writer uses a lot of Spanish in this book when she wants to talk to, like instead of monster, it's monstruo. Was that a good idea, do you think, by the writer? Does it work for you? Was it confusing?
I think that it was actually like a good choice because the main character, Seven, is an Afro-Latina character. So I feel like, and the way monstro sounds, it sounds more like serious, like more like scary, like the name of the monster is Monstro. So I like the writing choice.
I also liked it because it sounds better than, it just sounds better than monster, and it's more interesting than using English.
Which character did you like the best?
My favorite character was Valley Pepperhorn. Because I like her character, how she was like bad. I think it's a cliche type of character, like the bully turns good and thing. But I like that way that she changed, like from being a rich snobby like girl to like a more kind over time with her mortal enemy. So I like that.
My favorite character is Seven, because she has that like preteen kind of feeling, and she just wants to be something, and so she gonna try to make it happen.
I like Seven also because I can relate to her. Because, like he said, she's a preteen, and I'm also a preteen, so we have a lot of stuff in common.
Well, let's hear a scene from the book where Seven is willing to risk losing all of her magical powers, but has to convince her fellow witchlings to tackle this impossible task. Our celebrity reader is veteran journalist Stephanie Roberts.
The clause of the impossible task was not to be used lightly. It provided a chance for forever witchlings to close their circles by completing an impossible task. Impossible because only one coven of the 8 who'd invoked the clause in the history of the 12 towns had solved it. But 7 had to try. Once they were proclaimed forever witchlings, they'd never have the chance to become full-fledged witches again. This was their only shot. You said, I am willing to take that chance, 7. But in a coven there is only we. Is your coven okay with this? The Gran asked. 7 turned around, her face pleading, her heart racing. Valley was scowling angrily, her arms crossed. Thorn had her hands clasped and was biting her bottom lip, but nodding enthusiastically. It's better than being a forever witchling, Thorn said. I say, let's do it. 7 beamed, then turned to Valley expectantly. Valley shrugged one shoulder. Fine, we're already the literal worst. Might as well try. 7 gave Valley a reluctant smile and turned back to the Gran. My coven is on board, Gran. Very well, you have my blessing. I will consult with the Oracle, and your task will present itself in the next few hours. 7 gulped. She had hardly gotten used to the idea of being a spare. Now she'd have to deal with whatever the impossible task would be. Would they have to construct a seaworthy ship and find the elusive boggy-crone river creature? Find invisible plants? Defeat a warlock in a magical duel? It could be anything. I will then deliver your impossible task in accordance with 12 towns' laws. Until then, you remain witchlings. The Gran gestured for the spares to come forward, and as they stood there lined up, she made a giant X over their heads, magic to seal the contract until the task began. And then they would only have 3 weeks. 3 weeks to solve a mystery, 3 weeks to complete the task, 3 weeks to fix this, or they'd lose their magic and be witchlings forever.
There's a lot of scary things in this book. If it were happening to me, I would be very scared to actually tackle a lot of these challenges that they have. Is it something, I mean, I wouldn't want to do it. Would you?
To fight the night beast, like if you don't accomplish that quest or something, you get turned into a toad. Like I wouldn't honestly do that. I would just rather remain a spare or a witchling forever.
What about just the choices? You either have to go catch the monster or you get turned into a toad.
I'd rather die trying to catch the monster.
I'd rather try to catch that monster, because to me, I kind of like that monster hunting. It just seemed fun to me.
I would kind of just mind my business because I get scared easily. But if I had the option to catch the monster or turn into a toad, I'd catch the monster because I don't want to be a toad.
If I fight the monster, I'm going to get turned into a toad. And it's a high % chance that I might lose. So I'm going to just accept defeat and go home.
Well, the reason I would chase the monster is because I don't really get scared that easily of monster stuff.
So monsters may not scare you. What does scare you?
Life.
Well, do you think that's why fantasy is so appealing to kids these days? That
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because fantasy is like an escape to another world where you can imagine stuff, explore, write fanfics, draw fan art, lots of stuff you could do to get your mind off of the terrible things that happen in this world.
Fantasy is like somewhere you can go. You can explore things that you can't explore in this world and go out of your comfort zone and do things.
When I think about fantasy, it reminds me like of the word imagination because it's like you can see it, but nobody else can see it. So like you're in your own little zone. So that's kind of why I like fantasy stories as well.
So if you were to think of a book genre that you wish was written, I mean, there was a book that you would really wish you could find on the shelf someplace, what would that be?
There are lots of books about war, but like war with like more right, more detail, like insight into the real world instead of just sugarcoating like some words or like censoring some words, because the kids nowadays don't really need censorship because the world's already messed up as it is. So kids in the future will never understand what really happened in the past if they just keep on covering up, trying to keep their brains fresh and pure. But because they're not going to remain the same forever, they're going to obviously figure out what happened, and it's just best they know it now so they can be prepared for it in the future.
I would say things that's going on with black people in a community, and I would want them to be more realistic and like he said, instead of sugarcoating things, and actually tell what's going on in the world, like police brutality.
Censorship is like a real big issue because we won't really know what happened, or we won't really have enough information to like get a clear vision of what happened back then and connect it with what's happening now, because we won't never know because people want to censorship and cover up things that people should really know.
I think there should be more books about ancient history and like civilizations, because there's not too many books where it tells you a whole lot. It like give you little small details, and so I think they should write one that has like a whole lot of detail and then really explain about the civilizations.
Do you guys have any questions for our writer, Claribel Ortega?
What made you think about writing the book?
So for Witchlings, I have sort of a weird brain, you could say, because I got the first sentence of the book before I really thought of the idea. So the line, it was the night of the Black Moon ceremony, and the very last thing Seven Salazar wanted to be was a spare witch, just sort of came to me. And then, I know, sometimes as a writer, you're always thinking of stories and something comes to you without expecting it. I joke that I had to reverse engineer the story from the first line. I had to figure out, who is Seven Salazar? What is a spare witch? What is the Black Moon ceremony? And I started to explore those different things and build the world of Witchlings. But really, I wanted to tell a story about an underdog or a group of underdogs, because those are my favorite kinds of stories, where nobody believes in the main characters, but somehow they still end up showing everyone what they're capable of.
Do you have any tips for writing like a fantasy story? Because I'm trying to write a book with some of my friends about like a girl who gets transported to another world, and they're just two sides and they're trying to fight for her love, like a love horror fantasy type of story. I want to do you have any tips for writing that type of story?
That sounds very cool. I would say, first of all, the fact that you got started at all is so great, because I think that's probably the hardest part about writing a book. So just keep going. Don't worry too much about what other people are going to think about it at this point. Just read something that you think you would enjoy reading if you could pick it up as a book. You have a lot of different things going on in the book. So I would say, write down things like monster names, character names, spells, anything like that in like a specific document, because if you end up writing a second book or just needing to revise, it'll be a good place to sort of pull information from. So that's a little bit of practical advice.
What made you write this book, or does it compare to your life?
the whole concept of being a spare or a leftover witch was really something that came from me feeling left out as a kid, and also as someone who is from the diaspora. So my parents are from Dominican Republic. My whole family is from there. And I was the first person in my family born in the United States. So I'm Dominican culturally. I was born in America. But it was always like, I was not from there and I was not from here, really. I felt like I never had a home or a place to feel like I really belonged. So I wanted to write a story that reflected that feeling of not belonging anywhere. And it's something that's so close to me, to my childhood and to my life, that it really is a very personal story, even if it's about magic and, mayhem.
When you have a writer's block, how do you come back from it? And how do you get ideas for characters?
Oh, I love this question because my number one tip for beating writer's block is actually to not write and just take a break, because a lot of times your brain is telling you that you need to do something else. Now, I am a full-time writer, so I have deadlines and sometimes I have to sit down and write. So in that case, there are a couple of different tricks that I have. One very important thing to remember is that the physical act of writing things down is only a portion of the process of actually writing. There are a lot of other things that go into it, like brainstorming and daydreaming about the book and making playlists and world building. So you can do something else that's related to the book. Even if you're watching a movie that you could compare to your story, that could be considered research, and it could really fully immerse you in the story and give you inspiration. Another thing that I love to do is if there's a scene that I'm really looking forward to writing, even if it's not the next thing coming up in the book, I will just jump to that and write it. Just because, it's about getting some words down, even if it's not in order. There are no rules. But also, I really try to be gentle about my approach to how often I write. It's okay if there are days where I only write a page. I live by gentle consistency rather than like rigid discipline. And that helps because little by little you get the book done.
All right, well, let's get to the hardest question, which is, what is your favorite book and why?
I don't really know the actual name, but I love Judy B. Jones books because I can relate to her and like how she don't like certain people and how people make fun of her because of things she does. Because I have been in situations like that in my life.
I think my favorite book will have to be The Best Babysitters. It's about 3 girls where they come together to make a babysitter organization, but they have problems of their own, so they come up with satellite sitters. To me, that felt like a challenge, and I like challenge books, so that's why I like that book.
Well, actually, I have 2 of them, but I'm going to just explain one. And one of them was Diary of the Wimpy Kid, the series, because it's about this kid who's in middle school, and all these problems come his way, and I feel like that's relatable to me, because there's a lot of stuff that you're not ready for, and it just hits you, so then you don't know what to do, and that's basically what he's going through.
It's about this girl. Her father mysteriously goes missing, and her and her brother try to find the 3 people who can find her, Mrs. Who, which, and why. And they try to find her father. I like the horror element and like the family element, like how they need to depend on their family to save her father from the It, who's like a mysterious demon who's trying to stop her. So I like the horror element, the family element, and like just the general premise of the story.
You were talking about what was my favorite book when I was in middle school, and that one's called A Wrinkle in Time.
Oh, right. That's the book I'm talking about.
And you know what? That's one of our Book Club for Kids episodes. So you can actually listen to a conversation about that at our website, bookclubforkids.org. What about you, Claribel? What is your favorite book?
the books that really introduced me to fantasy, and that's going to be The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, the whole Fellowship of the Rings books. They were the first high fantasy books that I ever read, and I became very, very obsessed with them. My English teacher just sort of like slid The Hobbit over to me one day and was like, I think you're going to like this. And he was correct. And those books really started my love for the genre of fantasy and for the idea of writing these deep, rich, giant worlds and how you can get lost in them. So I'm going to go ahead and give it to those books.
Your turn, Stephanie Roberts. What's your favorite book?
Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. And I've enjoyed it because we all have had terrible, horrible, no good, very bad days.
Thanks this week to producer Chad Francis. Brandon Baker composed our theme with additional music from Andrew Walton. Emma Steinkellner designed our logo. Thanks to our writer Claribel Ortega and our celebrity reader Stephanie Roberts. And thanks to our readers this week, Nehemiah, Sanaya, Sky, Ezeal, and their librarian Edgardo Guerrero at Brookland Middle School in Washington, D.C. We have a free newsletter for teachers, parents, and librarians full of free tips about how to turn kids into lifelong readers. You can sign up for it at our website, bookclubforkids.org. And if you are interested in the days right after Halloween, we have a special Dia de los Muertos episode on our other podcast, the FINA Mendoza Mysteries. There's a curriculum guide that goes with this episode, and we will have a link on our show notes for this episode. I'm Kitty Felde. Thanks so much for listening.